podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cardiff Central Rugby Podcast. Just a quick reminder that if you do enjoy listening to us, please make sure you like and share the pod and our socials on Facebook and X. Please leave any reviews as they do help us develop the pod. So, gentlemen, no special guests this week. We're slowly trailing to the end of our summer of interviews, but I do still have the wonderful Dan and Carwyn. How are you both doing, gents?
All good, cheers.
All good, yeah.
Yes, we will not delve any deeper into Carwyn's response there. So although there's not been much on-field stuff happening for the Blue and Blacks, there is still plenty to talk about. So first of all, just want to kick off the news with sort of the sad news that former Blue and Black Brad Thayer has retired. So having played 95 games for Cardiff, whilst also a brief stint in Glasgow on loan and finishing up in Evening Trailfinders. Late 30s. I mean, it's a shame to have lost him. I was gutted when he had to leave the club, but such was the budget constraints. How do we both feel about this?
Yes, always sad when a player has to retire, probably a bit earlier than he might have planned to, but he had a pretty good innings for a pro player still these days. I think didn't quite get to 100 club with us, but was pretty close. Always a solid professional, and come back from there was that quite nasty injury 2016, 2017, where he had like a mini stroke or something, didn't he? So after a blood clot in the neck was technically what had happened to him. So good player, and obviously he's got the Fat Dragon coffee stuff with Dylan Lewis, so seems pretty set up off the field now for the next step in life.
Yeah, just echo what Dan's just said. Very solid operator. You couldn't say that there was an area in his game that was lacking in any particular manner. Did the job around the park and was very good. No, I was going to say clubman, but more than a clubman, very good regional player and solid regional player for a consistent period of time, and very dependable. So yeah, all the best for him in retirement. And like Dan said, hopefully that business goes from strength to strength for his purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, and so if you do, I have actually tried Fat Dragon coffee. It's very good. So feel free to support Brad in his future career. Moving on then. So we've had the minutes published of the latest joint supporters group meeting. So it was a reaction to the strategy, if you can call it that was released by the WRU. Some interesting points in there talking about Judgment Day and opening feedback. So if you do have things you want to talk about with Judgment Day, I do recommend joining either CF10 or Blue and Black Supporters Club, and that's a great way to get the message through to the WRU board. Abby Tierney seems fairly keen to keep this as an open dialogue with them. Dan, have you read the minutes?
Yeah, it was nothing major in this one. I think it's obvious quite new that it's obvious that the sort of Tierney and co are still quite new in their job. They're not committing to anything massively at this point. They're not they're waiting for this new sort of structure and full strategy to come out. They're not really going hard on any particular area, but I think it's encouraging that they're still prepared to meet with the supporters. This new regime, there was a long period where the previous itinerants of that position were silent and not particularly willing to meet, and so that's encouraging in itself. And yeah, I'd definitely say sign up to CF10 and the supporters club as well. It's well worth a couple of quid just to get your voice heard if you're that way inclined. But no, nothing major. I just think hopefully if the message keeps being drummed by those guys who are representing not just Cardiff but all of us, I think there's points that pretty much all professional club supporters in Wales are making around sort of Judgment Day and that sort of thing, then they'll start to get the idea of what we want. But at this moment in time, their hands are still quite tied by what came before, with contracts being signed up to, I think it's one more year of Judgment Day this year. So yeah, it is just worth keeping pushing on the same questions from them, and hopefully at some point it'll start making some inroads in WRU towers.
Anything to add, Cohen?
Not really. I think it's very important that that Abby and Co go to these speak to the clubs, because I think there's that. I personally, the big thing for me is transparency with the WIU. I felt it for a while. Said it numerous times in various situations, and I think that's a good first avenue to open yourself up to the clubs and say, look, ask your questions. We'll give you the answers we can. We'll take away the things we can't answer straight away and come back to you, or we'll take on board and we'll cut. The big problem at the moment is that they're doing it with something behind their backs, which is whatever this strategy is going to be. And I think once that comes out, there'll be a lot of clarity, a lot more clarity for the regions, clubs, the whole of Welsh rugby. To be honest, I think at the moment everyone's sort of looking at that strategy that was set in, what was it, June, July, and thinking, right, how are we achieving that? And still, that I don't think the regions are none the wiser at the moment from discussions I've had. So it's it's a good step in a good direction. I definitely say that, and long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on. So we did have a little bit of on-field action. So we had Cardiff playing more of an under-17 side, even if it was labelled as a under-18s, up against Dragons under-18s. Bit of a bad loss, but Dan, you gonna give us some positivity on why not to be worried?
Yeah, it was just around what the club have explained about how they're running the program this year. So the whole age grade program is across the 4 teams, well, 5 with RGC as well. It's under John Alder, I think, in his sort of development pathway stuff, and they've put this summer block in as well, just so there's sort of continual rugby for these guys throughout the year. A lot of the teams will run it as an under-18 program because that's what it says on the tin, and that's what the Dragons did. If you looked at their squad, there was a couple of lads who were away with the Wales under-18 side, went to Ireland a couple of years ago, who were straight back in playing for the Dragons. Whereas what Cardiff have done under Griff, and then it was Josh Turnbull running the team, was that they've used it as an under-17. So it's guys who played under-16s rugby last year stepping up where there's not, there's a 2-year jump there where we don't run an under-17s program. They'll play as sort of like a stepping stone into under-18s for this year, get some good experience playing against some older lads, training together as a group. They now go off. I think they might have one more game, I think, potentially this coming week, but they'll then go off in the first week of the school term coming back and play in the WRU College League for whichever school or college they've chosen to go to. And then when the actual regional age grade championship comes around with the under-18s later in the season, that'll be the mostly the second years then play in. So we won't see too much of the lads who've been playing this summer. So they lost 54-15, I think, at the Arms Park on Friday night, which obviously on paper is quite a heavy loss, but it's nothing to immediately panic about in terms of the quality of players coming through. It should, if anything, set up those lads who've played this summer now when 2025-26 comes around and their second year under 18s to go straight in and with a good amount of experience under their belts play regular rugby in the regional age grade championship.
Yep. And I've just one bit of news I forgot to put onto the roster, but yeah, congratulations to Rabina boy Sean Parry, who's made the Canada Pacific Nations Cup squad. So yeah, currently playing for, well, last season played for Pontypridd, but played for Wichita FC, and I think he's been signed by the Steelmen for this season in Super Rugby Cymru. So all the best. Hope you get some good game time. We'll always support a local lad, even if he is playing in a different red jersey. And sort of final bit I've got on the news now, because I think we'll talk about Summerfest right towards the end. You do both agree? Harry Millard is back in training, so I have had quite a bit of a nasty knock again towards the end of the season. So it's nice to see him up and about running.
Yeah, it's pretty much it's almost a regular yearly, sadly, occurrence for Harry, isn't it, to have a long-term injury? You've got to say what a performance he put in last season in terms of a guy that maybe I saw. I remember coming through because he came through under 20s and early doors, and everyone thought, "Well, this guy's a player." And I thought, the term footballer was being bandied around by everyone, left, right, and centre. And I think for a while then it was a bit of a worry that he wasn't going to realise that, not realise his potential, but realise that quality again. And last season I thought we saw it, granted on the wing rather than as outside centre, which is where I thought he'd end up. But he was brilliant at points last season, particularly. I can't remember the game that he made about 3 or 4 breaks down the right wing. Do you remember off the top of your head, boys? But he was brilliant that day, and he had superb performances throughout the season. So yeah, he's one I'm looking forward to again in the Cardiff shirt this coming campaign. Be interesting to see how much game time he gets, whether he is deployed as that on the wing, or whether Mason plays there, or if he's a bit part player, depending on injuries, etc. So, but all the best to him for this season, and glad to see he's back fit and firing.
Anything to add, Dan?
No, I just agree that the competition on the wing is quite mad now at the Rams Park, to be fair. I mean, you could probably put out about 4 good quality wing duos if they're all fit at the moment. So yeah, it's going to be some great training battles, and some be interesting to see who starts and what combinations they start in preseason and stuff as well. But yeah, I think Jockey's certainly spoiled for choice in that area of the pitch.
Surely the first choice pairing is nailed on, is it not? As in, I would have thought everyone's fit, you're going Josh and Theo, but maybe I'm.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that in terms of out and out wingers. It does, but like you said, though, it does depend what they want to do with Grady. Because I think if Grady's fit and they want him to play on the wing a bit more, because I mean, I've said it a few times. I don't think it particularly matters where he plays necessarily, and it's just how you use him. And I think Jockey is proven himself capable of using Grady no matter what shirt he's in, really. But if Ray is still churning out good performances week in, week out at 13, you might find it difficult to drop him.
At 38, not as in 13 jersey, not the age.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, 13,
initially I thought
times
13. I was like, I don't know if it's a joke, Dan, but
but yeah, if he's undroppable, yeah, Adams has still played pretty well for Cardiff, but obviously hasn't been 100% fit. But I think the beauty of it is that while we do have some top quality wingers, there is, like, Harry's got an injury record, Theo's got an injury record, Adams is developing an injury record now where he's played a lot of rugby and is one of the more experienced heads in that squad. So there's a good opportunity to mix and match that quite a lot. And that was the other thing Jockey showed last season with, particularly I thought, his front row forwards. He managed game time and rotation quite well to maintain momentum without putting players at risk of overplaying them.
I think that's the good thing as well. And I know Jockey went through what he saw as his backs with us a couple of months ago, and he said like a not a little, but a smaller stepper type and a bigger winger. You look at, and I feel like that bigger winger, you've got different options. You've got Grady, who is literally a bigger winger. Like, he's a big lad. You've got Josh, who's, always the saying about Josh is he carries harder than his size, isn't it? That he's a very, very good defensive winger. And then you've got someone like Gabe Hedmer-Webb, who seems to be able to do a bit of it all. You add Millard into that mix. You add Tom Bowen, perhaps, if that's where he's going to pop up into that mix. And I think it's a really exciting combinations. I think, as you said, there's plenty of options there, plenty of opportunities. And I really, although I say at the start, I think it'd probably be Josh and Theo first choice, blinking at if you've got a guy like Grady in the centres or Hamer Webb off the bench, that's not a bad 23 to start off with, is it? If you can call on them from the bench. So, hopefully all can stay fit and all stay firing. And while half of them are away with Wales, we'll see the other guys go in as well.
Well, I think this brings us on nicely to the next bit we want to do with this pod, which is sort of now I feel pretty much all the business has been done for establishing the squad. So I think it's time to just sort of go through, maybe talk who we think is going to be probably our first second choice. You know, not so much of a formal depth chart, but just sort of say this is who we have. These are names we'll be expecting to hear. And does it change anything that Jockey's looking to do in terms of the way he sets up benches or matchday 23s and such? So Dan, I believe you've got the spreadsheet.
Yes, I can share the spreadsheet, I think, for those watching online. Otherwise, I've tweeted it a few times, so you can scroll back through the media somewhere and find it.
Well, plug your socials, mate.
Right, there we go. That is from everything announced and all the senior academy and stuff, the Cardiff rugby squad for 2024-25. I think I count, I don't know, I've lost the stats now, but it was about 40 senior players and about 15 odd senior academy players is what the squad is made up as, I think. So it's pretty decent, I think, in a lot of areas. Don't know, do you want to go just top left across?
Yeah, let's start. Let's just go one to the outside backs.
Yeah. So loose heads then, for those not watching along, is Corey Domachowski, Ed Byrne, Danny Southworth. And then I put Rhys Barrett in with the first team. I think he's still on an academy contract technically, but he's somewhere in between the senior academy and the first team squad in a sort of transition year. And then we've got Cam, Tyler Grocott, and Rhys's brother Dylan coming into the senior academy. For me, I think this is probably one of our strongest positions on the pitch.
certainly based on reputation and pay. I mean, obviously Ed Byrne's been there and done that, slipping down the pecking order a bit at Leinster as some of the younger guys have been pushing through. And let's be fair, no one's getting much game time past Andrew Porter and Cian Healy. Then in the tight, I mean, Cian Healy had to spend almost as much time at tight head prop for Leinster as he has loose head there, I think, lately. But still very good wide head. I'm guessing probably going to be your sort of bench option. Danny Southworth, everything I've seen of him, admittedly not a huge amount. I've really liked from Exeter. Very, very abrasive, nice, good ball carrier, solid in the scrum. All the things are nice. Would like to see a bit more of Rhys Barrett this season. He was very sparingly used last season.
I agree with that. Sorry, Harley. Just I hummed very loudly. But no, I completely agree. Sorry, I am keen to see much more of Rhys Barrett. I think he's a lump of a bloke and he carries well, and he's so keen to see him go. I expect it to be Corey, Ed Byrne in that order. Ed Byrne's a good player, but I'd be surprised if he usurps. Good God, it's not a conquest, but you know what I mean. If he replaces Corey immediately, I think it is Corey likely to start because we're talking about solid players, but there's areas of the game overall where I think Corey can improve on all of them, but also I wouldn't say there's one where I go he's massively deficient in any. I think he's completely consistent across the board and can raise his bar in every level, like every player could. But he is the number one for Cardiff going forward this season. I'd be surprised if not.
It'd just be interesting to see how they use Byrne a bit, because obviously he's a touch older. He's played a lot of rugby. He's been around a fair amount of time. I don't know if he's somebody that Jockey will necessarily use off the bench too much. He's fairly mobile still. He's not an immobile guy at all. But you look at somebody like Danny Southworth, who is a very explosive, big carrier. He is maybe what they've identified as the Rhys Carey replacement in sort of raw attribute wise. Is he or Rhys Barrett as well, who is he's very mobile, big carrier, quick guy for his size. Are they going to be your more bench options, and then they'll just rotate Ed and Corey as your starters in and out then to keep them both fresh? And obviously Corey's got the Team Wales stuff as well, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree to some extent that the one reason I would hedge for Ed is that last season we were crying out for experience off the bench a lot of the time, or maybe it's just saying we need a bit more know-how to see these games out. And I feel like a guy who's been in Leinster's setup would bring that. And that's why especially at the start of the season, that's when I think you need to get those early wins on the board, the Benetton wins, the Zebra wins, those games in the board, compared to last season. Yeah, that's why I'd edge on Ed.
All fair
I
points.
think this is I agree with Colin on that one. I think yes, I said particularly boss wait, because I think we need to get that habit of getting over the line. Just need the plucky underdog has to go this season. So we've got and actually having someone like an Ed Byrne or Josh McNally coming off the bench, just sort of steadying it. It's maybe we go out all guns blazing for the first 60 and then we tighten up in 20, which is a bit of the opposite way around. Most people do it. I think maybe if we get parking the bus a bit more, because one thing we did quite well this season was we come out firing quite well in the first half and sort of the first 10, 15 of the second. And then when we needed to control the game and just make sure we see the bed. So I think that's fine. I think Tyler Grocott and Dylan Barrett probably will only see in SRC games for the Rags.
I think Dylan might still be under 18 this year, so we might not even see him play for the Rags much. I think it'll be Cam will be our main Rags prop, and then Dylan will be a year or two away. Onto hookers. We've got Liam Belcher, who hasn't been announced yet, but I think we're all widely expecting will be confirmed as club captain at some point. And then Evan Lloyd, Evan Daniel, Dav Hughes has re-signed. And then Tom Howe is in the senior academy, but he's another who is still under 18 this year. I think he might even be going into his first year of under 18s this year, technically, even though he played last year as under 16. So he'll be a little way off. But obviously Lloyd and Daniel have been in around the Team Wales setup. Belcher's the club captain. How much are we expecting to see of each of those?
I think it'd probably be fairly similar to last season, where those three sort of get rotated around, and then if there's an injury, then you might see Dav Hughes step up onto the bench, just as sort of that extra pair of legs when they need it. But it'd be interesting to see if Evan Lloyd secures the bench spot over Evan Daniel.
I think he might go a step further personally, but yeah.
I think we'll see. It depends on how. I mean, if Belcher's playing the way he was playing last season, I don't think you can put Evan Lloyd on the bench. I don't think you can drop him from the other.
No, I agree. Belcher was superb last season. I just do feel like I've seen something in Evan Lloyd in the last 3 months where I've gone, yeah, I see it now. I think he's taken a while because he's well documented, converted number 8 into hooker, so his weakest part of his game is the part you need to work on as a hooker, and regardless of whether you've been playing there 10 years or 5 years. But he's, I personally think he's got all the physical attributes. It's just nailing down those basics, and I'd like to see him be given more of an opportunity going into the season. And I was a big fan of Evan Daniel, but I feel like Evan Lloyd has just gone. He's shot forward, and that is partly down to being part of the Wales setup, but also you look at his performance on Judgment Day, he was superb. And I think he's someone that offers something different in that hooker position. I think I went a bit OTT and written an article not that long ago comparing him to Dan Sheehan. He's a bit off that yet, but he's one I am excited about going into the future. So I'd like to think that he's at least on the bench, if not starting most weeks.
Yeah, I think we'll see more we saw a fair amount of rotation, but it was pretty much Belcher always there, and then Lloyd and Daniel sort of switching on the bench. Where I think we'll see a lot more three-way rotation with that this year, where they'll sort of move in a loop. And I think it also, Belcher can still be an effective captain, doesn't have to start like the points with Ed Byrne at tight heads and loose heads. Sorry, we bringing Belcher off the bench at key moments will suit us at times as well. It'll also be interesting to see exactly what impact Cornel Van Zyl has coming in as forwards coach on them. I think that'll be an area that Jockey will have impressed upon him, that, line out, we've got these two young hookers, Lloyd in particular with his conversion, they need a fair bit of work. We've got a young guy in Teddy Williams who could go on to be a top level line-out caller. So that'll be I'm sure they'll have drilled line-outs to within an inch of their life over this summer. And to go from where we had slight improvement last year, the aim will be to go towards the top of the league, I would imagine, next season. Tight head then. This is where we're probably looking a bit light on the ground. Azarati is realistically the clear number one there. And then we've got Reece Litterick and Will Davis-King as the other senior options. Joe Cowell comes in from Cardiff Met on a senior academy deal, but obviously mostly in and around the first team there at 22. And then, excuse me, Harrison Rock is a slightly younger guy again. Might turn out for the might turn out for the Rags a bit, but I think we'll mostly be doing a bit of off-field stuff, bit of the S&C stuff the front row forwards need to go through at his stage of his development. Too light in terms of numbers and perhaps in terms of weight as well?
I wouldn't necessarily say in terms of weight, because, I mean, all three of them, I mean, Azarati is probably the smallest in both height and weight of the three. But I mean, they're all quite big. Like Will Davis-King's is he's similar size to Reece Carey was, and Litterick's quite a big boy as well. And he proved last season he's more than capable of holding up and doing the job there. I think in terms of numbers, I'd probably like to see one more. That's where we could have done with if Kieran Parker didn't feel the need to retire because of his injuries and stuff, that might have helped. But then we might get a situation where actually rotating the three's fine, and during the weeks when Azarati's away, Litterick and Will Davis-King can hold up their end. I'm not so sure. I don't think that the props themselves are lightweight. I just think we probably could have done with just one more body, particularly if you've got someone who's sore and you want to run 8-on-8 training.
Yeah, I thought Azarati stepped up well last season, as did Litterick. I actually thought whenever Will Davis-King played, he played quite well actually, and probably been a bit haven't thought that highly of him in the past at times, but I think he's coming on. My big thing with him, Harley talks to him as a big guy. He is a big guy. He just needs to learn to use that a bit better around the park. I think that's the main thing for me. Yes, your bread and butter as a tight end is holding a scrum up, and do that. That's job number one on the task sheet. But after that, I think he could use his size, his bulk a bit better around the park. I know Dan knows a lot more about Joe Cowell than I do, but I know there's a lot of excitement around him as well. But I think when you're talking about light, I'd look at the next group we're coming to in terms of numbers rather than size. But I think tight ends. I don't look at that list and worry too much, to be perfectly honest, especially when you think only Azarati is likely to go away with Wales. So then that leaves you with 2-3 with Cowell who can play there.
Yeah, just on Cowell from Cardiff Met. Was played most of his rugby at loose head so far, but switched to tight head early part of last season and was one of the better scrummagers in Buck Super Rugby as a league, really, at tight head last season. But as you get from Cardiff Met as well, big carrier, great hands, and a really good skill set. I think he'll play for the Rags probably, certainly in the first half of the season, and they'll see where he is. But ceiling wise, is very high there. And then using that segue onto the locks, I've only got 4 on the list as sort of out and out locks, with Seb Davis, Teddy Williams, Rory Thornton, and Josh McNally. There's nobody in the senior academy at lock at the moment, which is it's an issue for Welsh rugby as a whole, really, getting that pipeline of bid second rows through. Obviously, there is the added thing to that as well, is that it is one position that the English sides like to nab from us as well. I think the chap's name is Luke Evans, who was coming through and has been taken by Exeter. And obviously, we've seen the likes of Chris Shunzer and Dav Jenkins and the Ospreys be stolen away as well. So, that's going to be an issue, the pipeline. But with those 4 there, and then I'd sort of definitely bracket Ben Donnell into there as well as a sort of 4-6. There's decent players there, but I think is it another season of Cardiff fans going, please just bring us a Safa lock from somewhere?
I think there's 2 points on that. I think I personally, whenever I don't know about Dunn on the second row. I'm still not 100% sold on it. I quite like him at 6, but the other point on it is Teddy's class. Like Teddy is brilliant. Spoke to him a couple of days ago when for a piece I was writing, and fair play, he sounds excited, not getting ahead of himself, but he knows he had a good season, but also a frustrating season last year, missing out on most of the Six Nations, missing out on the summer tour with Australia. And I think he's one who's going to want to push on this season and really impress. He's fair play to him. He's a well-spoken lad, and he's a good player as well, which is a great combination. And will be a good leader in the future too, if that's needed from him. Seb, everyone knows Seb's got brilliant qualities. It's about getting the best out of him week in, week out. Thornton, I thought, was very good last season. McNally is a good signing. I just think you need a fifth there for me, at least. I think you need one more name there just to be, especially when you think Teddy's likely to go with Wales. Seb could, if he has a particularly good season, and there's a few injuries in and around camp. So it's one of those where I would like to see another name in there just for extra balance, but I'm quite happy with those as four options. It's just maybe another one would be nice, which I'm sure every region is saying about every single position that's ever been. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. Also, as well, I think like the balance and the sort of types of locks. Seb and Rory are quite, probably a bit more line. Thornton especially is a bit more of a line out lock as opposed to that heavy carrier enforcer type thing, which Teddy's actually molded himself quite nicely. He's almost a jack of all trades. Seems to be quite good up in the air and bossing around. Seb is, we've been waiting for him to show a bit more aggression in that department for years. I just think we've just got to accept he's going to be a baller lock. Let's not try and push too much. Josh McNally's very good at his bread and butter. But yeah, I agree. It would have been nice if we did get that. We always say the South African because it's the stereotype of what a hard-nosed lock is. But yeah, just something a bit more there. I mean, I think Ben Donald has the potential. I think he is actually a very good second row option. I think whenever he has played there, but it's whether or not he's used more at 6 because he's quite good in the line-out, but 2 also then you get that extra bulk at the side of the scrum and in carrying.
Question for you both then on this position. First game of the season, Zebra. Who's your starting lock pairing?
Eddie Seb.
Yeah, I'd say same. And then I'd probably go with the logic of that I've used for prop and hooker and go for McNally on the bench more just as a secure shot. Hey, you know how much of a fan I am of the 6-2, so I'd just play all 4. Of course, the problem is if you are playing all 4 every game, you are setting yourself up for fail when there is an injury.
And just for me, I think Teddy McNally for me, first game of the season.
That would be an interesting lot pick. I quite like that.
I think Seb might find himself at the start of the season, at least, a little bit more guy off the bench potentially early in the season, as good bit of experience there, but a bit of mobility as well. And I just wonder if McNally might end up becoming quite a key guy for us, actually, over the course of the season, in the same way, sort of like a George Earl did, where he wasn't massively heralded, but he sort of just turned up every week, 7 out of 10, never any more, never any less.
George Earl.
Yeah, and he just he doesn't really touch the ball. He just sort of goes ruck to ruck, just sort of blasting people out of the way, essentially. But yeah, that'd be interesting. One back row then. I'm not going to read them all out because I'll be here for about an hour and a half. But Dan Thomas has come in. Gwilym Bradley's back fit. Alan Lawrence has signed a new deal, and then the youngsters, Evan Rees is young 6/8, and then Lucas de la Rua, I think, is relatively well known about now after his Wales under-20 exploits. I don't know. I don't think there's a huge amount to say. We can sort of don't have to spend too long on this. It just looks quite strong, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. I can't let Teddy McNally go. It's constantly going in my head because he sounds like an extra from Braveheart. But the back row very strong. You've got your 2/8s there who are quality operators, Faletau and Martin. Then you've got your sevens, and Young and Thomas. You've got your sixes, and you've got your jack of all trades. What more could you want, really? That's we were talking about maybe wanting an extra lock. I don't think you could want an extra back rower there. The one problem is probably that they're all so good that 4 or 5 of them could go with Wales, and that's it's a good problem to have because of their quality. But if you think Lucas is probably going to go, uh, both of them might. Faletau probably will. Mackenzie probably will. Alex Mann probably will. And you don't know what Dan Thomas or Thomas Young could pull out this season. So um, that's it's a good problem to have, but at the same time, that's the only one that you probably go, well, around Six Nations time, it may be an interesting time. But then again, if you told me you had a back row of Alan Lawrence, William Bradley, and Lucas De La Rua in Six Nations time, I wouldn't be too disappointed to say the least. The way that especially the Alan Lawrence and De La Rua played last season, and Gwilym obviously had a long-term injury, but has shown a lot of promise in the past.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because even before we dip into the two academy lads, you've got 3 good back rows, and I'd say you're probably quite balanced. Like, yeah, I mean, feel free to disagree with anyone, but I was thinking, Donald Young, Faletau is almost the first choice. Then you're looking at Man, Big Mac, and then either Botham or Dan Thomas, depending on what you prefer. That is your second choice, and you're going down from there. It's quite good. You've always got your nice big carrier. There's plenty of line out options throughout, especially Alex Mann taking a lot more line out stuff towards the end of last season. I mean, it's Cardiff, of course. We're going to be blessed with back row riches. I mean, I know we were a little bit hands on the edge of our seats about the 7 situation, with Thomas Young being the only at one point being the only one, because we weren't sure what was happening with William Bradley. But yeah, quite happy with that.
Yes, I think you can tune out a couple there. I just say from the young guys, I think Evan Rees will play 8 a lot for the Rags this season, and is certainly one to look out for if you're going down to watch them. I think he could be a bit of a standout star, and I suspect he'll be in and around the Wales under-20 squad next season as well. Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, on a starting trio, I don't think there's going to be a starting trio. I would like to think it's horses for courses, as in, and I mean that in a good sense, as in you're looking at the opposition, or you're looking at what you're trying to do in a game, and you're then adopting who you think, or even, it's pissing down with rain on Saturday, who's going to be a better 7, Thomas Young or Dan Thomas? Or it's going to be, we're playing on a nice dry pitch on a 4G at home, and I want to throw the ball around. So that's more how I'd see it. That being said, Felipe Faletau starts.
Faletau starts always.
Faletau starts, come on, mate. But nothing against anyone else. It's just I've got an adoration of Faletau going back about a decade or more. So, yeah, he's quality.
Switching on to the backs then, scrum half, the most changes of any position over the summer. So Ellis Bevan is retained, but then we've got 2 new signings, with Ali Davis returning to Wales from Saracens. Johan Mulder comes in, technically from the Lions, I think, but has mostly played recently for the Griquas, I think is how you pronounce it, in the Currie Cup. And then Sean Davis is there as well, senior academy, but only just out of the under-18. So I suspect we'll see him mostly with the Rags this season. Probably one of the bigger unknown positions for us, chaps. I suppose that's probably a good question to ask about who starts in this position as well. Does Ali Davis come straight in, or after Ellis Bevan's summer with Wales, do we back him initially?
I think, given how well he played for Wales and how well he played all season, particularly when Thomas picked up an injury, and him having to play some long stints when the beer was our 9 cover, I think you back him all the way. I think you've got to reward how well he's played and how well he's stepped up. For me, I think jockey's in charge of the stable, so he's going to pick which one of Davis and Mulder goes on the bench. But I think initially it's got to be Bevan. I think you've got to start Bevan. So for me, Ali Davis seems more of if we're talking about that tightening up the game towards in the last 20, Ali Davis for me is probably one of the perfect scrum halves for that, because yes, he has still got, despite his age, still got a decent bit of pace. He is probably one of the better controlling kicking 9s that we've produced in Wales for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Alan Davis. I think as far as box kicking and his distribution is actually brilliant. His pass is beautiful to watch. If anyone's seen that, it's textbook. But I always felt that he was one who got a little bit more, one of those, you look back, there's been plenty of them, but got more stick than he deserved. He had, like most players, has had the odd not great game, but I thought he was always a very, very solid operator. My one thing is, um, like I said, I start Ellis and have Aled on the bench, but are they a bit similar in what we've seen from Ellis so far? I think I would like to see more of Ellis as a running threat going forward, and I think that's his big work on. Which is a great work on, to be perfectly honest. I'd have it that he's probably in the minority in being a scrum half who's got the other side, the half of the game almost nailed and needs to work on his running side. But that's probably the one area I'd like to see a bit more of him. And then got Aled to come on, who does have a running game, but is more known as a box kicking distribution nine who's a good controller. Yeah, great sign. I think that's a really shrewd signing, Aled. I've said it for a while.
Yeah, just to add something on Mould, then watch bits and pieces of him, of the footage that's available from the Curry Cup. He's quite a relatively big guy, as I suppose you just have to be in South African rugby, unless you're like sort of Colby beat you in a phone box kind of feat. He's like on the hard fast tracks of South Africa. He's got a good running game. He likes to take the ball away from the base and challenge the first and second defenders. So it'll be interesting to see, probably more so than even with Tinas, as we'll come on to with the fly halves, how his game translates to the Northern Hemisphere and our particularly vicious winters. But I think he might be kept in reserve a little bit in the early part of the season. I don't suspect, unless injury strikes, we'll see a huge amount of him straight away, especially as I think he was slightly late joining up for pre-season. But particularly maybe towards the back end of the season, where the weather does improve, sort of post Six Nations, and we've obviously got the trip to South Africa in that block in the final part of the season as well. He could become quite an interesting player there. Moving on to fly halves then, and it's pretty much a head-to-head battle. Sheedy comes in, De Beers already there. Harry Wild is stepping up from the under-20s, but I suspect we'll see him a lot with the Rags this season. He's had quite a bit of a checkered injury record over the last year or two, so I suspect they want to give him as many minutes in Super Rugby Cymru as they can possibly get him, particularly in the first block of fixtures in that competition. So Tinas, Sheedy, I mean, it's not a bad choice to have, certainly, but where are we leaning on that one?
I'll be the first one to pull the pin on that one. For me, De Beers incumbent. He starts that jersey. He's played really well for us. I mean, one thing when we get onto centres, I do think maybe someone takes the pressure of the goal kicking off him, because I do think that's just it's not a stress we need him to have, really. When you've got someone like Ben Thomas, who is unbelievably accurate with the boot on place kicking. Sheedy's, he's had some real struggles with injury and form. So, it'd be nice for him to sort of ease himself in slowly, maybe bits of time off the bench. I mean, Sherat last season was very reluctant to use a replacement 10. And, whenever he did take the beard off, it was usually for Thomas to come across one. But yeah, I for me, it's the beer starts and then you bring Sheedy in. I mean, it could be that Sheedy is absolute storming training and playing the beer off the park, in which case, fair enough. But from what I can only go with what I've seen, and I've seen lots of De Beer. Didn't see much of Sheedy last season because of his injuries. Go on. Strongly disagree with me. I can see that all on your face.
I know I'm in the minority on this one. But I've said it several times. I think Tobias had some brilliant performances. I probably disagree with the elephant in the room first and foremost is Callum's long-term injury, so he's going to take a while to get back into this. So he's probably going to be eased in. But I think he's probably one who wants to be starting week in, week out. Like he's that sort of mindset from what I've gathered, and he's. I personally would like to see him start. I think the the other person I'd like to see start is Ben Thomas, but I think we know that's not going to happen. I think we know that Jockey sees him as a 12 and that's where he wants him to play, and that's absolutely fine. You know, if your coach thinks that's where you should play, and I think the player wants to play there as well, then that's a bit that kind of ends the conversation. But you know, I thought a lot of Ben this summer at 10, and when you put your Wales hat on, which sometimes I do, you look at it and think, well, how is he going to get continuity and learn how to play the position week in, week out if he's not playing it for regional level? That would be my argument. But yeah, for me, we'll see how Callum comes back from the long-term injury. It will be Tinas at the start of the season, but I would like to see Callum get a more extended period in the shirt, because I do think there is something about him as an organizer and making sure players are in the right position that I think at the moment is probably an area that Tinas hasn't adopted as well yet. But then coming back to our organisation thing that we talked about earlier, sorry, therefore Callum would be great off the bench. So, you know, make of it what you will.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see a relative amount of rotation there, just for the reasons I've mentioned. Really, Sheedy's had a few injuries and needs to get used to playing on the 4G a little bit as well. And Tina's obviously played a significant amount of rugby last year, it's fair to say, pretty much every minute. I mean, personally, I really enjoyed to be here last year. I am a long time Sheedy fanboy, so I just think I think from a Wales point of view as well, you know, we're crying out for somebody to really come in and take that 10 jersey by the scruff of the neck. If Sheedy can get a good run of games where we have a friendly fixture run early in the season as well, he could be really a really good signing, and just great for him to get a fresh start after some on-field troubles, but some off-field difficulties to overcome as well, which I think he's spoken about quite well in the press over this summer. Harley?
Yeah, just one thing. So I'm basically going to contradict almost everything I did say, because I did just have a thought when you started bringing up the Wales thing. It would be interesting to see if he gets a run for the two Derbies, which are right on, because that would be just before the autumn series, and you know, in direct competition with, you know, almost by default the number 110 in Wales with Sam Costello. So actually, I could see some leaning. I mean, Jockey's been quite reticent to just follow what Team Wales want to do, and he's picking Cardiff first as he should. But actually, you know, it would be interesting to see those two square up in that early sort of derby thing. It's whether or not it will be too soon for him again after coming off all these injuries and all the other things. But as I said, because we don't get to see training, I don't know. He could be playing the beer off the park at the moment, and you know, rightly goes for it. But I said, for me, the beer starts for the first couple of games, just because we know he's been playing and been playing quite well.
It's my claim to fame again, playing against Sheedy. So I don't know if Dan remembers that as his first and foremost fanboy, but he sidestepped me to score a try under the post for Corpus Christi against Glantave back in the day, and you know, I nearly got him, but no, nowhere near.
It turns out you were in a different postcode.
I literally, probably. I remember lying on the floor and punching the ground, and someone going to me, "Why are you frustrated?" I was like, "I nearly got it," but they went, "No, you didn't."
Moving on to the centres, then. I don't think there's a huge amount of. We obviously spoke about Grady a bit earlier and his best position. I think we can all agree that probably the Ben Thomas starts as 12 and is quite clearly the first choice 12 there. Rory Jennings has come in from Newcastle as sort of the understudy to Ben there, then, if you want, when Ben needs a rest or is away with Wales. Ray Lilo still going at 13, one more year. And then this is where probably the youngsters is particularly interesting. We've obviously got Steph Emmanuel coming in. Inside centre, Elijah Evans, outside centre, steps up from he's spent last year playing for Cardiff Met in Buck Super Rugby as a fresher. I suspect we'll see him play quite a lot for the Rags in the early part of the season at outside centre. And then Oshan Darwin Lewis as well. I think he's more of an outside centre, just coming out of the 18s. Not entirely sure what his rugby plans are this year. He may well be in Buck Super Rugby for one of the Cardiff teams, but we wait and see on that one. I guess the question is he is more around the 13 position again, but how early do we start blooding youngsters in these positions is probably the main question.
What is Steph now? 18?
Yeah, I think he turned 18 this summer.
Like the guy's got limitless potential. He really does. He does look the real deal, but I still think it's a bit early. Um, I think the conversation is made a little bit easier by the fact Ben Thomas is so obviously first choice ahead of him, and then Jennings is your probably secondary option at 12 with we'll see what happens, but Mason Grady probably is a tertiary option, and even then reluctantly so, probably from if you look at Jockey's plans. But I think that is probably the 12s, and then 13s is really though gradually blooding Grady more and more in that 13 role. I would have thought that's the obvious plan, but Steph really could be great. He looks brilliant, but I think it's probably a year too early. I don't know how he wants to jump in, so I'll let him.
Yeah, so I was going to say actually, I'd say graded 12 is probably the quaternary option, but given that Sherratt seems to quite like the idea of Beetham as a 12 as well.
Oh yeah, true.
As a secondary position. Yeah, I think Roy Jennings, he's almost a carbon copy Ben Thomas. Really, it's a triple, that triple threat 12 that a lot of teams need. I mean, yeah, you're not obsessed in Ben Thomas from the 12 jersey. As I said, I'd quite like to see him take on the goal kicking as a more permanent thing for Cardiff, because I said he just strikes it so well. Like of watching the bits of the Australian tourists watched him kick it, and it was just mesmerizing. It was just very rarely in doubt. I said 13 options. I think, to be honest, I think Jockey might start the season as he finished off with Grady as the starting 13, and then you have maybe Lilo as more of a safety option. But I suppose if you want impact off the bench, then Mason Grady in the 23 jersey is about as good as they get. Interesting to see if Harry Millard's move. I know Downs prefers him more on the wing. When you say you prefer more at 13. I'm sort of not too bothered where he plays, because I feel like Cardiff play the 13 almost as an extra winger at times as well. So yeah, no, he's got that. There's that option. One thing that's not happening is Josh Adams at 13. No one suggested. I will blow my lid. It upsets me just the thought of it.
Gabriel Hamer-Webb's a big lad, though. Harley, do you fancy? No, I'm joking.
No. No, this is getting to locks at 6 territory now. There's someone who plays the whole back five.
I would say, just from my point of view, for young players coming through, I fancy my hot take might be that Elijah Evans is probably the most likely to break through this year, potentially. I think he looked really comfortable stepping up from under 18s to Buck Super Rugby level last year, which not many guys play as many minutes as he did as a fresher coming straight into university rugby. He then looked comfortable physically against some pretty big teams and big midfields with the under 20s, particularly in the summer. And I think if he gets a big preseason and one or two early run outs of the rags, and if there is, we're not far away from an injury crisis in the centre there, particularly at 13. Lilo is on the top side of about 90 now, so he's going to be he's not as held together as he once was. Grady is going to be away a fair bit. He might play on the wing a bit, but he's also susceptible to injury as well, when he's not got a great family history in that regard, certainly, and for a big guy with that sort of fast twitch stuff, he is liable to ping a hammy every now and again. So his game time is going to have to be managed. And if that's the case, then I think Evans could. I think they will be quite comfortable to turn to Evans, and he could come in and get some minutes. So he is one to watch for the Rags early doors, but could well finish the season with a fair handful of appearances under his belt. And 13 is not a position we're particularly stacked at in Wales coming through the system. Obviously, Louis Hennessy was a standout for the 20s, and but at top level, we've spent a summer watching Owen Watkin try and plug a hole there. So yeah, it's been it's not, the depth chart isn't massive, it's fair to say. Just moving on to the back three then to finish it off. Obviously, we covered the wingers quite a lot earlier. Full back wise, my question there, I suppose, is how much rotation do we see? Does Beetham didn't get a massive amount of game time there last season when it played the majority of the minutes, not undeservedly. I would say he was obviously one of our standout players, one of the standout players for Wales and in the competition generally as a breakthrough youngster. But are we going to see a bit more rotation? Are we going to see Beetham shifted into 12, maybe towards the wing as a sort of one of our more physical wingers, as a trying to put a bit of a square peg in a round hole there? But obviously a huge talent. How do you get him the game time whilst not detracting from Cam?
I think you're just hoping that Cam's going to be away with Wales a fair bit, because despite what some people say, I still think he looks one of the most assured options at 15 we've had come through for a while. As much as as good as Sandy's been, I think Cam. I mean, he had one bad half out in Australia, but that's the thing. So you might see Beetham playing a bit more. Is Beetham going to spend a bit more time being sort of a 22, 23 man? Because he's covering 12. Covering 12, and a very worst case 10. If say Ben Thomas and De Beer go down, it'd be It's a bit hard. I mean, I think this is one we're probably least likely to see any of the academy boys come through, because I think we do have quite a decent amount of stock in the back three, plus with Grady coming through. I think we'll probably see maybe Cam 60% of the time, Jacob the other 40, injuries allowing.
Yeah, I'd love to go back 12 months and know what that plan was at the start of the season. Because in my head, I think they probably thought, oh, we'll rotate between the two of them. And then Cam's form just dictated that he was on such a flyer that it was just like, he's your number one guy. And Jacob then coming back from an injury, there have been some rusty moments. There have been some really good moments as well. Everyone knows how good he could be and can be. Cam is your number one guy. It is a difficult one getting him that game time though, isn't it? Unless the only reason he would get more game time is if he slots in at 12 with Ben Thomas slotting in at 10. To be honest, that's the one I can see where you go, that's a fair enough starting team. And that's not me banging a drum as I was insinuating Dan was rightly doing about Louis Hennessy earlier, but I just don't see him being that number one guy by right at the moment. Anything can happen sadly through a season, and players aren't fit, players are away with Wales. But I think it's going to be an interesting one to see how he gets that game time and whether he does need to find a way of playing week in, week out. Whether it's he drops down for the Rags every other week, or whether it's he eventually has an opportunity to go out on loan somewhere. But I think he is someone that does need to get that game time more regularly, and I don't know if he's going to get it next season. But I don't know the answer, to be honest, on that one, because if you've got the fullback of Wales in your camp, you're going to play him.
Yeah, I think that's why I was sort of pushing towards the question, is that I generally don't know what they can do. And I think the loan option is a really interesting one. The thing is that you look at our back three options there, and there's great depth there. So from just a selfish Cardiff point of view, you're thinking, great, we've got just like really great options, and particularly a fullback there. Then because you put Matty Young as somebody stepping up, who will play mostly for the Rags this season, but in a year's time, we'll be asking the same question about him potentially as well. And, the danger I can see with Beetham, which is maybe starting to rear its head a little bit, is that, ultimately we just don't get him the minutes, and then he just doesn't reach the potential. And I think we've obviously said something to him, which has made him want to re-sign for us, because I suspect he had other options. Obviously, there was the whole Scottish thing, but I can imagine a couple of the other Welsh sides wouldn't have turned Beetham down if he'd become available. And indeed, there would have been teams in England and France, I think, would have been fancying a player with his ability and his size. But yeah, the loan one is interesting. This is a a full in-depth conversation for the other day. But I do wonder if the Welsh sides need to get better at ringing up English Championship teams and saying, look, do you want to build some sort of, not alliance or like partnership and stuff, but just like a general mutual understanding around sending guys out there for 6 months, getting them living away from home a little bit if they haven't done that yet in their sort of 16 to 18 window. Getting regular rugby at a level which is above the Welsh Prem or the Super Rugby Cymru. And I think Super Rugby Cymru will become will step up from the Welsh Prem. But at this moment in time, the top of the English Championship is a better league than the Welsh Prem / Super Rugby Cymru. So yeah, there's interesting things there. But yeah, ultimately for Beetham, it's going to take an injury somewhere for him to get a real run of games. And that's not an ideal method of developing players, just waiting for somebody else to get injured, really. So interesting one. But ultimately, I think probably barring one or two positions, which 'twas ever thus for Cardiff, tight headlock, we're in a pretty good space squad wise. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. Yes, looking good and positive.
Next week, we're comparing and contrasting the other regions, so we're saying who's better than who.
We're better than everyone apart from
and I'm not doing a spreadsheet for them
either. So we've got a bit of pre-season action coming up this weekend. So the Rags are away to Pontypridd. Dan, do you want to give a quick preview on that?
Yeah, I shall bring the Rags team up as well because I've got that in the background. There's the Rags team. There's the Rags squad. I think for the Rags pre-season wise, they got Pontypridd away this Saturday. They got Cambridge at home the week after. I don't think we'll see a huge amount of the under-20s guys won't be massively involved. They only come back into training this week. It'll be more about the guys in green on the screen, or the semi-pro guys for those who can't see it. More about getting them in. I think we'll probably see one or two sort of trialists as well. We usually see a couple of guys from local clubs so that Griff and Fishy can have a look at them. But just some names to look out for, I think, where you're looking at guys who aren't currently in the professional game that might step up, which is sort of what Super Rugby Cymru is looking at in that 18 to 23 window. Jared Williams is an interesting one at Loosehead, was in and around our age grade sides, has played pretty regularly for Exeter and Bucks Super Rugby over the last few years, in a very successful Exeter team. Gavin Parry was in the academy, dropped out during last season, played for Scotland under 20 in the second tier under 20 competition over the summer, and played a bit. I can't remember which team it was, but in their Super 6 competition as well towards the back end of last season. Sean Moore's come in as club captain. I don't think he'll step up to the pro game now. I think it's a bit late for that, but just on a general point of he'll be a key guy for us. Benji Williams is former age grade with us, was briefly in the Ospreys Academy while at Swansea Uni, and then played for Cardiff Met last season. Big number 8, another Ely boy to add to the list. But yeah, I think he could be one to watch this season as well. And then a fly half, Josh Thomas, has trained full time with the first team this summer. Former Ospreys, former Newcastle. Fly half, obviously, we mentioned there about the Sheedy De Beer battle, but if one of them does get injured, and it was, touch wood, it's not, but if it was a particularly nasty one, then it wouldn't necessarily surprise me to see them turn to Thomas ahead of Wild for the first team if there's a little bit of money just to sign him up on a short-term deal, and if his circumstances allow that. So be interesting to see how he goes early in the season. I wonder if he might play a little bit at fullback as well, with Wild obviously trying to get a fair amount of minutes. But yeah, those are it'd be more about the semi-pro guys for the Rags over the next week or two, seeing how they bed in ahead of the new competition starting in the middle of next month.
Just to jump in on Josh, because he was neither guy a couple of seasons ago that got the winning score out in Leinster for Ospreys. I think that was him about four seasons ago, and I was always surprised that he was allowed to leave, because I thought that he was highly thought of there, and a really nice player, to be honest. I think he's a really lovely player to watch as a 10. I think he's got something about him, and I'm excited to see him go out for the Rags this season. Can't leave without mentioning Glantaf boy and Aled Ward as well, just because there is someone I've actually played with. although he was starting ahead of me and he was 2 or 3 years younger. Make of that what you will. But that says, he was a very, very good, talented player. And hopefully, it's good to see him coming back to Cardiff. And fingers crossed he has a good season.
Yeah, that's absolutely. So if you aren't heading all the way up to Sardis Road for the Rags pre-season game, we have Summerfest at Cap on Saturday. So just a nice big celebration of Cardiff rugby. There's going to be all sorts of inflatables and fun activities for the kids. There'll also be some Q&As, and most importantly, the kit launch, which is something I am very excited to see photos from. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be around. I have family commitments, as the joys of being a new dad. So are either of you two going to make it down?
You're such
Obviously
a
a bit of a
nose,
trek
Hardy.
for
I
you,
love it. You're such a nose. I love it. Loves the kit launch. I have said I had said to Mike that I was going to, but I do have family commitments, so I do need to actually apologise and say that I won't be able to attend, in conjunction with other things. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame, but it should be a really good day out. I don't know, Dan, are you heading down?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll take the little man down. Weather's looking a touch dodgy early doors, but I think it's going to cheer up a bit later. But I shall do some tweeting from the Cardiff Central Twitter, so follow us there, and I'll whack the kit out when it comes out and give you my highbrow fashion opinions on it, because obviously I am well known as a
what are we hoping
fashionista
for this year?
From what I understand, they're holding quarters back for, I think it's next season's the anniversary season. I don't know when they're officially going to do it, but I don't know. I wonder if they might go a bit just sort of like a random design this year, something a bit different, a bit modern. See if they can do something that's we've had sort of hoops and stuff the last few years, so I wonder if they might try something back again, a bit modern. But yeah, I don't know. As long as it's definitely black and we're not doing is it dark blue again, then that's fine.
Are we hoping to keep pink for the alternate kit?
Yes.
I fucking love pink kits. I really do.
I
hate wearing pink. I hate pink normally, but I love it on the Cardiff kits. They always do it well.
I love it. It's something unique. It's something original. Has a nice backstory. Why not? I really do cherish that pink kit. I think it's a good reason to wear it, and it's very nice normally. But yeah, why not put pink lightning bolts to the black kit as well, or the blue kit? And anyway, maybe I'm getting too rassing with this idea, or too stad. Sorry, I'm too stad Francais with it.
I mean, if any team's going to have some lightning bolts, it's got to be Gwalia for next season. Assuming they're confirmed as one of the teams for the Celtic Challenge, which obviously we will cover. So just a few quick timings. So it all opens at about 10. That's when you can play on the bouncy castles and the rugby dartboard and such. Kit launch at 11. They've got meet the players from 12. There's also going to be Q&As with coaches. First playing Q&A will have Callum Sheedy and Josh Adams, and then the second one will have the two new old heads in Ed Byrne and Josh McNally from. So there'll be one and the others, and then there's going to be a couple of skills masterclasses. I don't know what they are. Other things to look out for: CF10 are going to be doing tours of the trophy room. The Blue and Black Supporters Club, they're going to be there taking it. I can't remember what. I'm sorry, guys. I did see what you were doing, but I've forgotten it entirely. But they'll also have things for you to sign up if you do want to go for coach trips on the way tours and such. I think it's £5 for the year, and it gives you discounted travel to away trips, which is always good fun.
Yeah, and you can book to go with them to Ealing on the day as well. So if you want to jump on for that one for pre-season, which looks like a pretty decent trip to see Lloyd Williams.
Yeah, and it will be much cheaper than getting the train or driving up yourself. So definitely worthwhile. Unless there's anything else we want to bring up, chaps.
All good.
In that case, all that's left for me to say is thank you very much, Dan and Carwyn, for joining me this evening.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you all for listening or watching. Please remember to leave us a review and just any comments or feedbacks, however you consume this content. Thank you all for listening and watching. Ta-ra.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.